and the gearbox I'm using, which is a transmission from a G. Oh my God, of course the battery would die. Ah! All right, I'm back, and we're going to talk about what engine should go in your E34. So the first thing that you want to think about is, what does your E34 look like in stock condition? And specifically what I'm asking is your car a inline-6 or a V8 car? So for pretty much all of BMW's inline-6 cars and their inline-4 cars, when you look at the engine, it almost looks like the engine is on the passenger side of the engine bay. And that's because BMW lays down the inline-6 at 30 degrees. And so on the E34, they put a whole bunch of stuff on the firewall on the driver's side. And so if you were looking to V8 swap your inline-6 car, you're going to run into clearance issues because the cylinder head on the driver's side of the car is going to run into all that stuff that's on the firewall right there. And so because of that, for the guys who have inline-6 E34s and you want to do an engine swap, but you don't want to deal with relocating a whole bunch of stuff, what I would recommend doing is doing another inline-6 or an inline 4-cylinder swap. Now, if you have a V8 E34, that kind of changes the entire equation because you have access to a whole different set of engines. What you will typically see people in the community doing is recommending the M60 B44 swap, which is not a real engine that BMW ever produced on their own, but because these engines are kind of like Legos, you can kind of like take bits and pieces from here and there and put it together into like the ultimate E34 engine. Now, the reason why my car currently does not have an M60 B44 swap in it is because while the community does kind of build this as a straightforward and fairly easy way to get more power out of your E34, there are some important pitfalls that you need to consider. And the first one is that not all V8 E34s are created equally. And so what do I mean by that? Well, my car is not a 540. My car is a 530. And this is back when BMW's names kind of made sense. And so the 540 is called the 540 because it has a 4-liter V8. My car is a 530. Yes, it is an M60 or a V8 car, but it has a 3-liter V8. Actually, that engine right there. Now, the problem with trying to do an M60 B44 swap with the engine that I have is that the cylinder heads on the 3-liter models are not as good as they are on the 4-liter models. So if I wanted to do the 4.4-liter swap, what I would essentially have to do is pull this engine out, go get an E39's engine, and then also go get cylinder heads from an E34. Like all of the things start to stack up. And I don't really know that it's worth all of the time and effort for the amount of power that you get out of it, which kind of leads me to my second problem with the M60 B44 swap. And what I mean by that is when you think about all the effort that you have to go through to make an M60 B44 swap, I mean, you have to acquire basically 2 engines if you're in the situation that I am with a 3-liter. If you're lucky enough to have a 4-liter, you still have to acquire a whole nother engine. At the end of the day, what you're essentially doing is boring your engine for cheap. You know what I mean? Like you're getting 10% more displacement, which isn't anything to sneeze at, but kind of like in that video where I talked about the LSs and trying to figure out if you want a 6-liter versus a 6.2. When you are talking about the same engine architecture, the same heads, the same intake, everything's the same. The only thing you did was increase the displacement by 10%. The only thing that's going to happen when you put that engine back in is that it's going to make 10% more power than the 4-liter version of that engine did. Now, if that is enough power for you, go ahead, do that. If you really care about BMW purity, yeah, that's the way to go about it. But for me, that's not really how I would approach this. So when I was looking at upgrading the power plant on my E34, I really did actually want to keep it all BMW and, you know, go with the M60 B44 swap. But the more I thought about it and the more I kind of collected parts, which kind of ADHD moment, that's why that engine back there has the E31 velocity stack intake, is because I was actually collecting all the parts to do an M60 B44 swap. But the math just didn't work. And when I'm looking at buying an E39 engine and then heads from an E34 engine, it just didn't mathematically compute, especially when I started looking into doing an LS swap. And I firmly believe that this is the best swap that you can do to your BMW E34. Now, the last time that I said this on this channel, you guys got all angry and called me uneducated hillbilly and, you know, all types of stuff. But basically, your guys' complaint was that you feel like going to an LS is going backwards in technology and is ruining the chassis of this car. And some people even went so far as to like message me on Reddit and send me a message that they've done all this stuff before and putting a LS in my car is actually a step backwards and I'm gonna make less power than I started with. I mean, kind of a tangent here, but this is why you do not become a blind fan of any brand. I love BMW, don't get me wrong, but if you are blind enough to think that that crusty engine back there that made 215 horsepower is a step above a V8 that makes 345 horsepower, and you're saying that I'm gonna make less power, where's the power gonna go? It's just gonna like...
They've all got away. There must be like a big gate open on the back and all your horses just got out.
And so, like, once you move past, like, all the fanboyism of it's gotta be a BMW V8 and this, that, and other, you'll really start to understand why I think this is the best engine for your E34. First of all, like I said, is the power. Even though that one guy thinks that this is gonna make less power than the stock engine, that's not true. Straight out the box, this engine has 345 horsepower, which is more than any E34 had from the factory. So straight out the gate, without making any other modifications, this engine is an upgrade over what you had before. Now, a whole lot of people were very, very concerned that I'm ruining the chassis dynamics of this car and the handling is just going to be absolutely horrible. And I can kind of see why people think that. This is an iron block LS. It weighs 100 pounds more than an aluminum block one. I'm going to make another video talking about what LS you should go after. But even though this is an iron block engine, when I weigh this engine and the transmission that I'm using, which is a transmission from a BMW 335i, a E90, when I weighed both drivetrains back to back, the LS only weighs 10 pounds more. And so, like, when you let that sink in, this is an iron block 6-liter V8 with a manual transmission on the back of it, and it only weighs 10 pounds more than a 3-liter V8 with an automatic transmission. For an autocross car or a race car, yeah, that 10 pounds, like, you really want to think about where you're adding weight, especially adding weight onto the nose of the car for a competition car. But this is a street car. This is a street car. So making that trade-off of 10 pounds for 50% more horsepower, that's a no-brainer. Like, hands down, that's a no-brainer. The other thing to consider when LS swapping your E34, or really any BMW for that matter, is something that I said on my second channel in that LS video. And somebody commented that never has anybody who's a BMW owner thought that deeply about chassis dynamics and handling. So maybe it's worth repeating here, but when you swap to a LS engine, you probably will increase the handling of your BMW. Almost this whole engine, it's behind the front wheels. So that's a big advantage right there. And then finally, the most obvious benefit of swapping to an LS and an E34 based on sizing is the engine's physically small. This engine bay doesn't have a lot of room. Now, obviously, like I said, BMW did do some things to kind of help out the V8 owners by relocating the brake booster down here using this bracket, right? But it's still really tight in here. But this LS has plenty of room to party. So whereas like with the M60, you would drop a bolt or a wrench down here and it would just go to the nether, right? There's all types of room around this engine. And then the final reason why I would recommend a LS is pretty much the reason why everybody recommends an LS is because they're quote unquote cheap. I'm not saying do things in the cheapest way possible, but this engine was $600. It was less than half as much as a M60, M62. BMW's engine codes are going to kill me. It's less than half as much as an M62 B44 that I was going to buy. So yes, I could have bought 2 of these. And well, in next week's video, you'll find out I actually did. Now, if you've been around my channel for a while, you know I always talk about like the economics of certain mods and why I choose certain mods over the other ones. And while I do prefer mods that are cheaper, I'm not made out of unlimited money. I'm a YouTuber that doesn't make any money on content that I make. But like the goal is not just to purely save money. In my mind, it comes down to a value proposition. If you save, I don't know, let's say $700, which is actually what I saved going with the LS versus the M62. That frees up $700 to go somewhere else in the build. Rather if that's new cylinder heads or a cam on this engine to make it even more potent, or I could spend that $700 anywhere else in the car. Like for example, I could get an LSD, and that's going to greatly improve the driving experience. So at the end of the day, if you're looking at an LS, I think it's the most price efficient way to get more power into your car, and not only just get more power in, increase the handling, and it's going to free up money to do other stuff on your car. So hopefully I've convinced you that you want an LS in your E34. If I did, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. I'm trying to remember to tell you guys to do that in videos because I forget. So make sure you do that stuff. And then come back next week because I'm going to tell you guys all of the mods that went into my LS.